firm through all my life. In my searching, oh God, you're near. In my wandering, oh God, you're near. When I feel alone, oh God, you're near. At my lowest, oh God, you're near. Oh, you're near. Oh God, you never leave my side. Your love stands firm through all my life. Oh, height nor depth nor anything else could pull us apart. We are joined as one by your blood. Hope will rise as we become more than conquerors through the one who loved the world. Oh God, you never leave my side. Your love stands firm through all my life. Oh God.
Hello, Upper School. This is Mark Jennings, your head of school. It's your Wednesday chapel on April 8th. I always love this chapel during the school year, this chapel that happens right before Easter when we set a time just to think about Christ's death and his resurrection. Of course, this year it's different, and it's different for everyone as we do Easter in a very different way, not at our church gatherings, not at in the pew sitting next to other families. So it's going to be different for all of us, but it's still Easter, and we still celebrate. Before I begin, though, I want to just say how pleased I am with all the work that you're doing. It's impressive. You guys have been doing it now for 3 weeks, and it's you do it with joy, you do it with patience. It's been really encouraging to see. So this Wednesday, we're in between Palm Sunday and Easter, which is always an odd sort of part of the week. And I thought maybe I'd talk a little bit about Palm Sunday, the Sunday that just passed. And so I want to read the account of Palm Sunday from the Gospel of Matthew. So let me bring it up here. So Matthew 21, verses 1 through 10. Now, when they drew near to Jerusalem and came to Bethphage, to the Mount of Olives, then Jesus sent 2 disciples, saying to them, "Go into the village in front of you, and immediately you will find a donkey tied and a colt with her. Untie them and bring them to me. If anyone says anything to you, you shall say, 'The Lord needs them,' and he will send them at once." This took place to fulfill what was spoken by the prophet, saying, "Say to the daughter of Zion, behold, your king is coming to you, humble and mounted on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a beast of burden." The disciples went and did as Jesus had directed them. They brought the donkey and the colt and put on them their cloaks, and he sat on them. Most of the crowd spread their cloaks on the road, and others cut branches from the trees and spread them on the road. And the crowds that went before him and that followed him were shouting, "Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest." And when he entered Jerusalem, the whole city was stirred up, saying, "Who is this?" And the crowd said, "This is the prophet Jesus from Nazareth of Galilee." The word of the Lord. It's a party, right? That's what's going on, a party, a great celebration. Passover had started. Passover, as you know, is one of the great festivals of the Jewish calendar. And during the first century, it was estimated that Jerusalem would swell during Passover time to 2, 3 times its size, as pilgrims would come from all over to celebrate Passover there in the Holy City. Now, Palm Sunday is an interesting thing for me, to be honest, if I'm honest with you. Now, I know what typically it is, right? When we gather at church on Palm Sunday when we're not in quarantine, and usually the kids march around the church holding the palm fronds, and it's a big celebration. It's a big party. The whole sanctuary sort of becomes this moving fern. But I've always had a problem with Palm Sunday. Maybe I should put that on Facebook. Right now on Facebook, it's trending, to put things that other people like that you don't. Like, that seems to be a thing right now. Students, you might not know what Facebook is. Facebook is a social media platform that your parents and your grandparents use for self-marketing and public relations. So, in case you're wondering what I was referring to. Here was my problem with Palm Sunday. It seems almost like a farce at times, because I know what's happening. I know what's about to happen. I mean, Palm Sunday, the passage that we read begins with the disciples, Jesus telling the disciples, go and find this beast, this donkey, this foal of a donkey. Because that's how Jesus wants to enter in. Jesus is very purposeful in how he wants to come into Jerusalem. We'll get to a little bit about that. And so the disciples do what he says. Like, they obey. They're right there with him. And then he sets on the donkey and he begins to enter in. Like, so the passage that was referenced there, spoke to the prophet, is Zechariah 9:9. Zechariah 9:9 looks forward to a time. This is an Old Testament book. Looks forward to a time when the king would come in. The king of Zion would come in, riding a donkey, and he would bring salvation and victory with him. And the people get this. The people know what Jesus is doing. They understand the symbolism, because you didn't ride into Jerusalem. You would walk into. Pilgrims walked in, and so here was this person, Jesus, who, right, was already well known. He had done some amazing miracles. He had healed the sick. He had raised the dead. He had fed the multitudes. He had calmed the storms. He had word of who he is had spread. And so he has this height of popularity as this one who's not afraid to speak against religious leaders, who is doing amazing things and has powerful teaching unlike anybody else. And there's a fervor in Jerusalem at this moment too, because it's the Passover. It's a great celebration where the Jews remembered how God rescued them out of bondage in Egypt. The great story of Exodus, how the Jews were under Egypt and God brought them out into the promised land. And of course, during this time in the first century, Rome is in power. So Rome is the occupying government. They're the occupying power. And so there's this political fervor to it as well. That there's this time of maybe this is going to be the next great Exodus. And here is this person, this man, this Jesus who's doing amazing things. And so the crowd sees how he's entering in. He's entering in as if he's king. And they respond accordingly. They put the garments down as a gesture of submission, so that he walks, and the beast walks over his garments, and they wave. They cut the palm branches and they wave the palm branches, right, as just a sign of adulation, and they proclaim, Hosanna, right, Hosanna. Here is our King, the one who comes in the name of the Lord, which seems great. So why do I have a problem with it? Because in a matter of days, it's all going to change. These disciples who so obediently have followed him and have been with him, who have seen him do amazing things and heard his teaching, who left everything to come follow him. And these disciples who just go even get the beast and walk into Jerusalem with him. In a matter of days, they're just going to vanish. They're going to leave him. They're going to abandon him. He's going to get arrested, and out of fear, they're going to run. Even Peter, who's seen it all, is going to quake at the questions of a slave girl by a campfire. The people who are just shouting, "Here's our king, here's our king, here's our king." In just a matter of days, Hosanna is going to turn into crucify him. These people who are laying their garments before Jesus is going to shift to Jesus' own garments being torn apart and gambled over. The shouts of "Save us, save us, save us," that's what Hosanna means, save us, is going to turn to mockery. He saved others, but he cannot save himself. The palm fronds, the wood of the palm frond is going to give way to a crown of thorns and a rugged cross. The whole city stirred in adulation. Who is this? This is Jesus. It's going to change to mockery and insult. And the people will be passing by him on the cross, hurling insult. Maybe this is why I have trouble with Palm Sunday. Because it seems like a farce, right? All these people and everything they're saying, they seem to be saying the right things, but they're just caught up in the moment. I know what that's like. We get caught up in moments all the time, don't we? Go to a sports event. We get caught up in a high school sports event. And we'll start saying things and yelling at people that we would never do. We'll say things to referees that we would never say to them in anybody else in any other job. It's so easy to get caught up in the moment. And it's exciting, especially when it seems to be something enjoyable. Then we definitely want to get caught up in it. Something full of life. A few years ago, I was coming back. I was teaching on the North Shore. And I was coming back from my class, and I'd stopped by the North Shore Mall, and I stopped to get a coffee. I had a long drive back, a long commute. And I'm sitting there in line, and next to me are a couple of women, and they're having a very active conversation. Now, I'm not sure exactly what they're talking about. They're speaking a different language. I believe they're speaking Portuguese, and I don't know Portuguese. Now, had they been speaking ancient Greek or Hebrew or Aramaic or a little bit of Latin or some German or French, okay, yes, sure, I'm all in. But they weren't. But their laughter was fun, and it was kind of contagious. And so I started laughing along with them. And they must have thought I understood what they were saying, because they immediately then pulled me into the conversation. They sort of gestured and they made a joke, and then they paused. And the pause was clearly that conversational pause that indicates I'm supposed to say something. I have no idea what they're talking about. Now, what I should have done in that moment, I should have been like, "I'm sorry, I don't speak English. And then they probably would have just changed the conversation to English and I could have participated in it, but I didn't want to do that. No. That's too easy. I'm too caught up in the moment. So I look at them and I go, see. Apparently it was the right answer because they laughed, I laughed, and the conversation kept going. And then they paused again. See, I say, again, no idea. We keep having the conversation. Finally, it's my turn in the line. I get the coffee. I move on. I wave them by and quickly get out of there. Why would I do that? Why would I say words in part of a conversation and part of a subject? Why would I join in when I have no idea really what's happening? Because I get caught up in the moment. And that's what was happening on Palm Sunday. People were looking at Jesus and everyone was excited and they were getting caught up in the moment and they were saying things that they really didn't know what was happening. They wanted a king who would liberate them from Rome. They wanted a king who would set things perfectly right in terms of political power. They wanted to go back to the good old days of King David, but this time even more. That's not the kind of king Jesus is. We can get all excited and want Jesus to be something. We can want Jesus to be a Republican. We can want Jesus to be a Democrat. We can want Jesus to somehow take ownership over our causes. But understand, that's not who Jesus is. Jesus didn't come so that he could serve our causes and lead us in a way that made sense to us. See, we look at Jesus and we say, come on in, King, and deliver us from all the bad guys. Set things right. Save us from Rome. Save us from the powers that be. Save us from the oppressors. Jesus came to save us, but in a much more profound way. He came to save us from our own sin. Our own sin that separates us from God. He came to save us because we were the enemy. We were the ones that needed rescuing and saving. Right? We were on the bad side, enemies of God. And Jesus came to save us from that. So he is Zechariah 9:9. He is hope coming to town, but in a very different way. Not in a way that lends itself to just political fervor, but in a way that goes to the cross to suffer and to die so that we might have life in him. So we're halfway between Palm Sunday and Easter. And my prayer for you is that we won't be in Palm Sunday saying the right words for the wrong reason. But we will look at the cross and the resurrection. And we will say, Jesus is alive. Jesus is Lord. Hosanna, because he's come to save us. I miss you all. I can't wait to see you. It won't always be this way. We'll be back together again. Until then, have a happy, happy Easter. Peace.